Hey, love bugs, and welcome to the very first episode of Seen with Serena Kumara. I'm Serena, and I'm really excited to welcome you to this podcast all about coming back to yourself. The unlearning, the remembering, and the returning to what has always been true about who we are and what we deserve. Most weeks, I'll come on the mic and just say things that I know I needed to hear in case you need to hear it as well. And it only felt right to start this season talking about the most accidentally magical time of my life. It wasn't supposed to be catalytic. It wasn't supposed to be deeply healing. It was just a tired girl who decided to choose self-care over self-correction. And that is my year of whatever I want. Yes, I took a little bit more than a year to focus on just moving in the direction of my desires. And I want to tell you about why I did it, what I did, what I gained from it, and what I would do differently if I had to start over again. So get comfy and let's get into it. Let's talk about how we even got here, okay? So this would have been probably 7 or 8 years ago. I was at a very stable place in my life. I was comfortable. Everything was fine. There was no big problems. And there wasn't one big aha moment, but it seemed like over the course of like 3 or 4 weeks, I kind of kept consistently realizing that there is not a single category of my life where I am fully fulfilled, like where I'm satisfied. So we're talking friendships, dating relationships, my relationship with myself, even work. Everything was just fine, but it wasn't great. It was surprising for me to feel that way because even at that time, I was not a stranger to mindful living. I was clear on the fact that thoughts become things. Life doesn't just happen to you. And so I had been living in an intentional way for a few years there. So it was jarring when it was like, okay, all of a sudden, it doesn't feel good anymore, right? So I did what I normally would do in a situation like that. I jumped into what I call a self-love boot camp. It's really self-improvement where you focus on maybe self-discipline and trying to identify what's out of alignment so that you can correct it. I will say that it is a form of self-love, I think, where you look at something and you say, okay, I love myself enough to fix it. But the problem that comes in and why that didn't hit for me at that time is that the goals that I was setting and like the new standards and the changes I was making were not really connected to me because there was a self-discovery gap. And so it's very hard for you to create and move in the direction of things that are for you when you don't really know yourself, like your values and what's important to you. So you set these goals and you reach them and they don't hit, and that's where the lack of fulfillment comes in. And I think the moment that shifted the way that I decided to pour into myself, where I finally came to the conclusion that a year of doing whatever I want was the answer, was a conversation that I had with my best friend. She was helping me work through some feelings. She was affirming me in such a way, it just, the things she was saying felt very specific. She was highlighting like the freedom I had and the resources and opportunity that I had. And it hit me like, she said it so matter of fact, and she's also right, but why am I not living like that? Like, why am I not living like someone who's free? Why am I waiting for some kind of permission? I realized I had put myself in some kind of box for whatever reason, and all of a sudden it hit me like, this is not just about affirmations and speaking to yourself kindly. This is giving yourself permission to do some shit for yourself. And so then it was like, it all hit me at once. Like, girl, you live in this big, beautiful city. You have these great opportunities. You're well resourced. What are you doing? Doing the same thing all of the time and telling yourself no as often as you are. It's time to try some stuff. And I wish I could tell you when I came up with the year time period specifically, but I remember that whenever it was, this was how I justified it. I need to explore and try things because I was like a few months shy of 29. And people will act like, your 20s are for exploring and your 30s are when you become a real grown up. It's now or never, which isn't true. But I feel like it's now or never. I'm going to explore and pour into myself right now before I have to be a responsible adult. And I'm going to do whatever I want until I turn 30. And so that is officially how the year of whatever I want was born. Now, I didn't have any structure. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I didn't realize it was going to change the way I view the world. It was just going to be me giving myself permission to have a good time in a non-reckless, but still indulgent way. All right, so here's what it looked like. First of all, the 12-month or the 1 year container, that probably was more like 15 or 16 months. It was very interesting to look back at it and realize I needed it to be a specified time period to justify it to myself, for me to give myself permission. Something about just saying, hey, I'm going to live like this now. I'm going to start just embracing my joy and centering it. That felt too risky. And I could not, my nervous system would not allow me to just do it in an open-ended way like that. So that's how we got that container. And while I recognize that it was still me putting myself in somewhat of a cage, I'm actually not mad at the container, because I realized that having that specified time period allowed me to give myself permission to focus on it, to go really hard with it, because girl, you ain't got forever. Let's do this now, right? And so speaking of permission, that was one of the huge themes of this time period. I would say the other two themes are obviously exploration and boundaries. I gave myself permission to do things that didn't necessarily make sense, that didn't serve a greater purpose, and didn't serve anybody outside of myself, which at that point, wording it like that, it took a lot for me to get comfortable in that. So for permission, I gave myself permission to do things that were just about what felt good, right? What would bring me potential joy that I just felt like I wanted to try. So I took like a dance class. I took not one, but two different classes on how to tie different kinds of head wraps, because I wanted to know. These are not classes that were going to turn into certifications. They weren't meant to develop me regarding my career or start a business. It was just like, that sounds like a good time. I think I might be into that. I started giving myself more permission to be too much, which naturally I'm one of the too much girls, and that's okay. I remember at some point I realized, like, I am a fashion girl, right? I went to college for fashion. And so the ritual of getting dressed and being intentional about how you adorn yourself is something that's important to me, that I had kind of gotten out of to a certain degree. And I think a lot of that had to do with, I had kind of internalized the idea that if you do that, you may bring too much attention and people may have the wrong impression of you. And so over time, I had really started shrinking myself. And so during this period, I really took a minute about, like, what do you, in the world of year of whatever I want, that includes, what do you want to look like? How do you want to feel in your clothing? And so I gave myself permission to put on the extra ring and extra bracelets that some might say isn't necessary. That's fine. Wear the sequins in the middle of the day because you feel like it. And it seemed like that might be considered a small thing, but it really helped me to stop shrinking, which is so necessary, especially for the next period of my life and the work that I do now. Joy is valuable. Joy is replenishing, and joy is an act of resistance. And for a while, I was not allowing myself to do that, because I was able to see why that trait is actually really valuable, specifically for somebody like myself, who doesn't have a ton of energy for a bunch of stuff that's not serving me. It will deplete me. And so I have to get clear about my boundaries. But on the other hand, I got more grounded in my principles. And so I developed a certain standard. Like, there are just certain ways that I will not treat other people that I might have in the past. And it has nothing to do with I'm not matching your energy. I just recognized this is important to me. I'm under no circumstances, I'm not treating anybody this way. There's certain behaviors that I just will not display. And it doesn't matter who does what. And I believe that seed was planted during this time. Another thing is I learned to trust myself, and I learned that my desire is not dangerous. So much of this year was about intuitive movement. This feels right, I'm going to move in this direction. This doesn't, I'm not going to. And recognizing that, like, I can trust that nudge. And even if there's a misstep, I can also recover from it. The sky doesn't fall, and life still goes on. And that is huge because it helped me to build a better relationship with healthy risk. And that is really what helps keep me from going back to being caged, because that inability to take any kind of a risk because you're afraid that you won't be able to recover from it, because what if it fails, and all of that, that is one of the things that kept me from moving. And on top of my desire not being dangerous for me, I do believe that there was something in the back of my mind that said that if I centered what felt good to me only, if that became the most important thing to me, then I would hurt someone else. I think it came from life experiences where I didn't have a whole lot of people in my circle that I loved, that I felt like were good people, that really were intentional about centering themselves. The people that I saw doing that were folks that I didn't consider good people, right? They were like stepping over people. They weren't treating people very well. And so this taught me that those two things don't have to go hand in hand. You can absolutely center your own experience while still being mindful, by still caring about how you impact people. And I'm grateful to know that now. Now, this one is big. I learned about the relationship between flow and abundance. Baby, when I tell you, it seemed like the less work I did on things that were directly related to making money, like my actual corporate job, the more money I made. I'm not kidding you. It was like the less effort I made, the more raises. I think I got like 3 raises in like a year period, and I wasn't doing any more work. And I really do believe it's because of that frequency of pouring into yourself and how that raises your vibration, where money is like, oh girl, we've been waiting on you. Let's get to you real quick. And that was so opposite from what I believe to be true, is like you get everything through hard work and dedication. And it was like, well, yeah, you dedicate yourself to yourself and you're going to get some more money. I also got to learn and embrace the power of play. You might see me on social media every so often saying, hey, go play. I recognize that there was a chunk of time in my life where I got really intentional about rest, and I felt so good about it, and like I'm living a balanced life. But I realized that I was going from work to rest, and there wasn't a centering of pleasure or play at all. And that's a major hole. And so I was able to recognize like what comes when you do center your play. Sometimes that's where clarity comes. You get clarity from your play. Sometimes that's where peace comes, right? Sometimes that's where an opportunity comes from just centering your play. And it was such a valuable lesson to learn. We kind of touched on this before, but the way I put this is I became more sovereign and therefore more free. So we kind of talked about the relationship with risk. Like I'm going to take this risk and follow my intuition, and nothing fell apart. I know that I can trust her. But this sovereignty is like sometimes things don't work, right? And you can still be centered in who you are, and you can still be okay internally, which is where your freedom lies. Like that might fall apart, and it might be inconvenient, and it might even be a big rumble. Everything might fall apart, but I won't. I'm sovereign. I can recenter while everything gets built around me. I don't have to wait to be okay until the things are okay again. And so before we go, I do want to give you some things that I would do differently if I were to start all over again. So the first thing is that I would go bigger. I feel like the decision itself was really big for me, but there were certain things that I just never did and I never considered, and I don't know why. Solo trips, for whatever reason, I didn't take a single solo trip. I do them now, but it's like it never even crossed my mind. I don't know if it was something about safety at the time or about like money or whatever, but I totally could have, and I probably should have. When I look back, there were things that I kind of remember wanting to say yes to, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And I don't know why, but I know there's something to it. And so now I would do that differently. The other thing is that I would not explain it. I wouldn't necessarily hide it, but it is such a deeply personal thing to do. And it is also something that is somewhat radical. And if you're not in community with folks that think that way, you could very easily find yourself influenced or second guessing, especially if you're somebody that already struggled with making that decision. Was in very supportive community. And so I didn't have any problem with maybe the one person I shared it with. But I recognize when I look back, like that could have easily been some influence that would have kind of gotten in the way for me. And the last thing I would do differently is that I would not get distracted. Now, listen, you may not realize it, but when you start pouring into yourself like this, you become so magnetic. And a lot of times, folks don't get that light doesn't just attract light, light attracts everything. And so there needs to be an awareness that folks are going to want to be around you, and you can entertain who you want to. Even if it's not forever, right? We talked about that. But there needs to continue to be the focus of, no, this is my me season of focusing on me. And so we can entertain each other, we can have fun, and I can assess what you're here to do, but you can't get in the way of pouring into myself, because I do feel like everything flows a little better. Your discernment is higher. You hear yourself a little clearer when you're in that space in the middle of it. Because I know how much there is to gain from that time period. If someone comes in and they want to be a part of the journey, then that's cool. You don't have to be all by yourself. But there is something about somebody who doesn't necessarily realize it, but they're trying to knock you off the course. And in full transparency, my year of whatever I want happened in 2 phases. And I did have a period where, a clown tried to drag me into the circus. And if I would do it again, I would still entertain him, because clowns are entertaining. But would I allow it to take me off my path for a little while? Not even for a little while. So if you're feeling like, okay, well, I want to do my own year of whatever I want, I'm just going to give you a few quick tips. First one is make it your own. It doesn't need to be a year if you don't want it to be. It could be a week. It could be a day. It could be 6 months, right? Do it your way. Focus on what you want to focus on during that time. Please just let the focus be exploration and not any kind of intentional self-discovery. Just explore the world, explore other people, explore subjects. And that non-judgmental self-discovery will naturally happen. But I think that kind of self-discovery is very different than the kind that's like, I'm going to journal and find out what's inside. Both are valuable, but it's different. And this is a very specific experience where you're just in the world and something that you didn't know about yourself pops in front of you faster than you're able to judge yourself for it. The next piece is set the intention. I believe that the energy that you're looking for will rise to meet you. And so you decide, I want to do a year, whatever I want. That doesn't mean that you have to know exactly where to start or what to do first. Just set that intention and see what comes up. My other piece of that would be start with the things that you had, hobbies that you had as a child that you fell off from, that you're still interested in, or like places that you kind of have always wanted to go, events that you wanted to experience, but didn't allow yourself to. This would be the time to make a list of that and start moving through it piece by piece. And then just follow the thing. Like when the opportunity, when you go somewhere that you're interested in and then you find out about, oh, I love this. And here's the organizer of this event. Okay, I'm gonna follow the organizer. Oh, well, this organizer mentioned this other event. Well, let me follow who organizes that event. That's how you create that web that makes this year so exciting and effortless. And lastly, don't you turn this into a boot camp. Don't turn it into, this is a year of whatever I want. I'm supposed to be exploring and I have 16 things planned for this weekend, but I'm dead tired. That's not how this works. The year of whatever you want also means honoring yourself. And so we can get ahead of ourselves. We can get very excited and feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But moving into the world of should defeats the purpose. Some things you're into will fall flat Give yourself permission to pivot, and remember, like, this is not for anybody but yourself. You don't have to present a project at the end. It doesn't have to go any particular way. And in fact, that makes the journey much more beautiful. Listen, I wanted to give you as much detail as I could about that experience that was so catalytic and transformative for my life that I just kind of stumbled upon, in hopes that some of that resonated with you and you can make it your own and start or continue your own journey. And so now I'm going to pull this week's affirmation. I will be pulling from Unapologetic Affirmations. It is my personal collection of 100 plus reminders of who you are and all you deserve. And it's meant to be just like this. It is an intuitively guided book that you're supposed to use whenever you feel like you need a little boost. This week's affirmation is, I am worthy of relationships that serve my highest good. When I'm using my affirmation practice, I will write them down. I'll set alarms to say them to myself if I need to. I'll make them my screensaver, whatever you need to do to take this along your week with you. So in conclusion, I have some final thoughts. This time period in my life reminded me that my joy is reason enough. I don't need to justify ease, pleasure, or curiosity, and the world doesn't fall apart when you allow yourself to follow what feels good. It actually starts to bloom. And so I'm just going to present some questions to you for self-reflection, in case you feel called to do any of this work yourself. The first one is, what does joy look like before you try to turn it into something productive? And the second one is, who do you become when you stop trying to earn your pleasure? I love you. If you are not following me already, you can find me on Instagram at Seen with Serena, on TikTok at Serena Kumara. That's SerenaKumara, and on YouTube at Seen with Serena. Subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you next week.